Thank you for tuning in to podcast number 18 of NBA Talk with Jaywalk. I'm your host, Jonah Walkenfoos, and today we're going to be talking about the USA men's basketball team that's going to be heading to Paris soon. We're also going to be talking about the Summer League takeaways and just kind of what my thoughts on the Summer League are. And we're also going to be doing an NBA team preview on the Chicago Bulls, so make sure to stay tuned. Okay, so if you guys don't know, or if you guys haven't been paying attention, Team USA has been playing some showcase games to kind of get themselves ready to go to the Paris Olympics in 2024. They've played against Canada, they've also played against Australia, and then today, as of Wednesday, July 17th, they've played Serbia. They've won all three games, and I just kind of wanted to give my takeaway on this, and then I'll also kind of say my top three USA men's basketball teams to ever play in the Olympics. But yeah, I mean, the Canada game looked very sloppy. The US, it was their first time playing together, just all these stars coming together, having to set their egos aside and try to play as a team and play as one. You could definitely tell they were going through some growing pains, and Canada was giving them a run for their money. And I think kind of one of the reoccurring things for all of these teams that have played the US and all these international teams is they have great talent on the team. It's more the depth that they lack. And the USA thrives in depth. I mean, we've been watching the USA team. If you haven't been watching, Anthony Davis has been coming off the bench to back up Joel Embiid. Him and Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo. And they've looked good. And Anthony Davis has been one of the key factors to why they've kind of pulled away from other teams, because no other teams is going to have a backup big man that's going to be able to guard players like Anthony Davis. I mean, maybe their starter has, played well against Joel Embiid, but then once Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo come in, it's a problem. But yeah, I mean, and then we saw the U.S. play Australia, and when they played Australia kind of gave them a run for their money. I mean, we saw players like Josh Giddey, Dyson Daniels, Jock Landale. I mean, they started to really make the U.S. kind of worry a little bit, and I believe the U.S. only won that game by 6 points. I mean, Australia came back from a double-digit deficit, I believe, and I don't know, Australia just stuck in there, and they just played tough. They played physical basketball, and they were, standing their ground. And the U.S., I mean, that was another concern. It was another growing pain that they've had. I mean, and what I've been noticing a lot is the U.S. kind of get up and into these big leads, and then they just start to blow it because they start to take their foot off the gas pedal a lot. So they got to fix that. And then once they played Serbia, they blew them out today. And the reason being, they didn't take their foot off the gas pedal. They played very well, and I thought they played much better as a team, and I'm excited to see how the U.S. are going to play going into the Olympics. I believe they play South Sudan, if I'm not mistaken, in a couple days. So that'll be like the last showcase game. And then it'll be time for the Olympics where they play their first game. So I'm also going to talk about the top three USA men's basketball teams of all time that have ever gone to the Olympics. And granted, remember, this is my opinion, okay? This is not based off of facts or anything. I'm just basing off of like what I think is the most dominant team, or the top three most dominant teams to ever play for the U.S. There's been very good teams. So if I didn't mention the team that you think, please don't be offended. Just remember, this is my opinion. I think I'm going to go from number 3 to number 1, okay, just to kind of add some suspense. The number 3 team of all time to play for the U.S. was the 1996 team, and they were considered the Dream Team 2, where some of their key players were Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, and Scottie Pippen. I mean, you got those 3 players on your team, you're going to be doing pretty good. Overall, though, like, just a good team, dominating. I believe they won the gold. I mean, I'm pretty sure every single team I'm going to mention has won the gold. I didn't put a lot of research into this, just letting you know. So this is all kind of opinion-based, so there's not going to be really any facts or anything in this part. But, I just think that was overall roster-wise, like, that is the number 3 team to ever play for the U.S. Number 2, I put the 2008 team, and they're considered the Redeem Team. And the key players on that team were LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Dwayne Wade. I believe Dwayne Wade was actually a 6th man. on that team, and they actually have a documentary about this team, and they have a documentary about the team I'm going to mention as well at number 1. But yeah, I mean, this team was dominant. I mean, when you have Kobe and LeBron on the same team, that's not fair for the rest of the world, and it showed. So, but this number 1 team would, in my opinion, destroy every single team, or not destroy, but they would beat every single team that's ever played for the U.S. And this team is the 1992 Dream Team. And some of those key players, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. You have 3 top 10 players of all time on your team right there. And they dominated. Like, they didn't let anybody have a chance. The only game they lost was to, I believe, the youth, like the select team for the U.S. when they had the scrimmage at one time. And it ended up, like, kind of fueling a fire to where now when the U.S. played in the Olympics, they didn't lose by, or they didn't, like, they won by over 20 plus points every single game, and it might have been more. So, like, this team was dominant. You've got Michael Jordan, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time. You got Magic Johnson, one of the best, if not the best point guard of all time. Larry Bird, one of the best scorers and pure shooters of all time. Like, you can't beat that team. I mean, I get it. You could maybe rank this upcoming team onto this top 3 at some point, but we haven't even seen them play in the Olympics. But yeah, like, this Dream Team was dominant. I mean, I've watched a documentary of them, and I don't know, like, this team, I don't think anybody would even come close. Even if this team, the USA team this year, played against a Dream Team, I don't think they would even come close to them. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. What are your top 3 men's USA basketball teams of all time? So yeah, that's the topic of the USA men's basketball. Okay, so we also have another kind of league that's going around for the NBA, and that's the Summer League. And if you guys don't know what the Summer League is, it's kind of an opportunity for, NBA teams to be able to go out there and let, their rookies play, or maybe their second year or third year players play. Or it's also another opportunity for players that maybe played in the G League or got a tryout on a team to go out there and try to make a roster spot. It's also an opportunity for players maybe that have kind of been away from the league for a while and want to come back. This gives them the opportunity to try to, prove their point that they can be on an NBA roster. And I really like the Summer League. I think the Summer League is an excellent addition to the NBA. It's been here for a little bit now. And it's just an opportunity, like I said, it's just an opportunity for players to make a roster, and I love seeing that because there's a lot of underrated players that definitely could make an NBA roster, and this could be their only chance to be able to prove their point. And a lot of players take advantage of that, and this is an opportunity for, maybe players to get a two-way contract, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically every NBA team outside of the 15-man roster can have 3 two-way players on their team where basically they can play like to a limit of 60-something games in the regular season with the actual team, but then they also have to play in the G League as well. So basically they'll be back and forth between the G League and the regular NBA team that they're on or assigned on. And basically it just gives them the opportunity to develop basically in the G League. And then if they're good enough and they start playing well in the G League, they can move up to the NBA and start playing with the actual team and potentially get quality minutes. This has happened a couple times. I mean, we've got players that can definitely do that. I mean, you got Alex Caruso, who is now one of the most valuable two-way players in the NBA. He played in the G League for a while. So, I mean, this is very important for these kind of players to be able to try to make a mark for them and try to start their own NBA career. Kind of in my notes, I put, this is like the stats in the Summer League are kind of one of those things that it doesn't really define the skill set of the player. I think like for what I like to look at in the Summer League for these players, whether it's a rookie or just players in general, is how does their game translate to the NBA? Because the Summer League is very sloppy basketball. I mean, it says it by itself. You can have 10 fouls before fouling out in the Summer League. That means they know it's bound to be sloppy. So, I mean, you have to be able to see what can translate to the NBA. I mean, we've got players like if you can shoot the ball well, that might translate to the league pretty well. If you could play tough defense, that could translate to the league well. And one of the problems is yes, there's players that can perform well in the Summer League, and maybe they look really good. They have great stats and stuff, but they don't translate to the NBA because they're playing against worse competition in Summer League. That's why I kind of look more towards, is this more of an NBA translation? Like, can this skill set translate to the NBA? Are they good at playmaking or whatever? Because, you get a lot of players that come out here and try out maybe and come and play for the team, and maybe they are good at just shooting or something. But that's not going to be good enough in the NBA. You could be a great shooter, but if you're not a good defender, if you can't make the right reads on offense and defense, like, you're probably not going to make either a two-way contract or an NBA contract. So what I like to look for is, does this skill set translate to the NBA, and how well can they do that in the NBA? And like, this is also in my notes I put, this is a chance for the rookies and younger players and just players in general to try to find their footing in an NBA type atmosphere. So they're going to be playing alongside they're going to have NBA coaches training them. They're going to be playing alongside players that have played or are still playing in the NBA, and it kind of gives them some footing. It kind of gets them more relaxed and more comfortable, hopefully, obviously, but this is just the opportunity for them to just kind of find their footing in the league. And then this also, gives players in the G League or returning players to try and get a training camp invite or even a team contract, whether that's a two-way or a regular contract. Like, I really like this. It's kind of like in the NFL. I love preseason because it kind of gives you the opportunity to see like those players that got the camp invites and they're performing well in preseason. Well, maybe they could find their spot on the 53-man roster at the end of the year or by the beginning of the season. So, it's an awesome opportunity for these players to be able to go out and get contracts. And it just gives the opportunity for us NBA fans to watch, maybe the recent person we just drafted or the person from last year that we drafted, and just to see them be able to perform again and just to watch our favorite team play basketball again. I think that's the best part about this whole Summer League. So I love the Summer League, and I just want to know what you guys think about it. Sorry for the mumbling. I feel like some of that you might have not understood, but yeah, if you want to take away one thing about my thoughts of the Summer League, I love it, and it needs to keep on going. So yeah, that's the Summer League. And we are on the final topic of this podcast of NBA Talk with Jaywalk, and we're going to be doing an NBA team preview on the Chicago Bulls. So let's do a quick rundown of how last season went for the Chicago Bulls. So they finished 9th in the Eastern Conference with a record of 39-43. They made it to the second round of the play-in tournament, but lost to the Heat in the second round, so they missed the playoffs to potentially be the number 8 seed. And then the first game of the play-in tournament, they beat the Hawks to end up playing Miami, which, like I said, they ended up losing. Some of the big offseason moves that they have made this offseason was they traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey straight up. They also drafted Matas Buzelis at pick number 11. They signed Jalen Smith into free agency, with which they used some of their mid-level exception for. And then they also did a sign-and trade where they sent DeRozan to the Sacramento Kings for Chris Duarte, 2 second-round picks and cash considerations. There was also another player involved. I don't really remember his name, but he was waived immediately, so I don't really consider this a part of that deal for the Bulls. Overall, like, solid moves. We can definitely, if this doesn't make sense to you of kind of the moves they're making, they're kind of trending towards the youth movement now, instead of trying to just get all these veteran players to help them win now with the core of DeRozan, Levine, and Vucevic, especially now that they've broken that core up because DeRozan is on the move to Sacramento. So now, with that being said, the key players for this Bulls team as of now, which before I mention these key players, I'm not mentioning Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic because I do expect them to be moved either before the season starts or by the trade deadline this season. So the key players going into the future for the Bulls, in my opinion, is Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams, Matas Buzelis, and Jalen Smith. And all of these players are under the age of 25. Like, this is a very young core, and they're very good players. Like, Kobe White finished second in the most improved race this last season. Josh Giddey, while he's not a good shooter, he's a great facilitator, and he also is able to finish around the rim well. Ayo Dosunmu made a big leap. He's a kind of high energy player. He plays very well in the fast break, and he's a good defender. Obviously, as he learned from players like Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso defensively. Patrick Williams, he's young. He hasn't really proven anything yet. He's shown flashes of what he could be offensively, and he's already shown really solid defense. So if he could become that two-way player for the Bulls, that would be great. Matas Buzelis has already had a great start to the Summer League, and he's been performing very well. And then Jalen Smith, he was a draft pick a couple years back, a top 10, and he's just not really been given the opportunity. But when he has been given the opportunity, in certain games, he's played very well. So I'm excited to see how this young core for the Bulls is going to play. Some of the things I think the Bulls need to do is they need to, this season, move on from players like Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. Lonzo Ball could be a player they could also consider to try to move on and just move off of his salary. But I think they got to at least move on from Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic just to kind of go towards more of a youth movement and just let the young guys develop. I think this upcoming season, you just let the young guys go out there and you let them play their best. You let them go out there without any restrictions. You try to continue to develop them and let them work on their game and play their best and let them compete, while also potentially trying to keep your top 10 pick. As the Bulls, from the DeMar DeRozan sign-and trade a couple years back, they traded away their first-round pick to the San Antonio Spurs, but it does have a top 10 protection. So let's say by the end of the season, the Bulls have a top 10 pick in the draft. It doesn't go to the Spurs. It'll stay as a Bulls pick, but that pick will just convey to the Spurs next year. Obviously, if the Bulls don't get, I believe, a top 10 pick. But yeah, I think you just got to let the young guys go out there and just work. I think teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder did this. Now, I'm not saying the Bulls are going to end up being like the Thunder. I really hope so, and that would be awesome. But kind of how they did a year back, they just let the young guys work, and they saw what this young core could do. And then after that, you go into the next offseason, and then you go, okay, we did good in this, but we also didn't do very good in this spot. So, let's work on that instead of working on something we already have good with this young core. So I don't know. I think this season's just going to be a big teller on kind of what the Bulls need to continue to work on and just kind of the big holes on the team and maybe the places on the team where they just don't need to fill in anything for. So I think the Bulls have a good future. I think obviously they're going to probably end up with a worse record next year just because they don't have DeMar DeRozan, their most reliable scorer on the team. So, but I think that's expected for the Bulls as they're trying to maybe trend towards a, not necessarily a rebuild, but more of a retool with younger players, which is kind of a way of saying rebuild, but I think it's more of just they're trying to compete younger instead of competing with a cap, to it. Because with this last team and these last couple of teams, we know what they were going to do. They were going to be a play-in team. But now with this younger team, you don't know how they're going to be able to perform and how far they could go. So I'm excited to see how the Bulls are going to do. And with that being said, that is going to be the end of this podcast. I thank you so much for tuning into podcast number 18 of NBA Talk with Jaywalk. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you guys for giving me all this advice on new topics. Make sure to message me or whatever. Give me ideas for the next podcast, to just topics to talk about, because we're in the summer. The off season is kind of the boring stage of the NBA where there's not much that's going on. So give me some topics so I can continue to keep you guys entertained and spread this word about the podcast and tell everybody about it. And I thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. Make sure to stay tuned for next week. I post every single Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, and I will see you guys next week. God bless.